So let's start first with question 68 on page 88. We need to calculate the seasonal indices. We're looking at the sales of umbrellas at a particular shop for 2005 to 2007. So an important consideration in the question, when you eventually work out, when you've gone through step 1, 2 and 3, worked out your seasonal indices, you're being asked to give your answer correct to 1 decimal place. Really important. So as we're calculating, I'm not going to round down, but when I give my final answer, if I don't follow that recommendation, if I give it to more than 1 decimal place, you will be penalised. So maybe when you're reading these questions in an exam situation, or when you're even in a SAC, as you read the question, highlight it so that when you're giving your answer, you're making sure you're satisfying it in the form that you're asking for and minimizing where you potentially could lose marks. So let's start with calculating. We need to do the sum of this first one. So remember I said we're adding together, this is my first cycle, 2005. I've got 4 seasons in that cycle, 21 plus 32 plus 52 plus 13. Add that together, get 118. Let's do the same for 2006, 23, 35, 56 and 12. Add that all together and you get 126. 24, 39, 58 and 17. And when you sum those all together, you get 138. Now we want our average. Now I'm going to take that sum. There were 4 seasons, so we divide it by 4. This gives me 29.5. 126 divided by 4 gives me 31.5. 138 divided by 4 gives me 34.5. So I have calculated in this my seasonal average. We have completed step 1 of the process of calculating your seasonal indices. Now we need to move to the next step. So the next step was we have to work out our seasonal proportions. To work out the seasonal proportion, maybe I'll just lower that a little bit just so you can see the original data. We now need to work out our seasonal proportions. So you take the original data that we had, 21, and we're going to divide that 21 by 29.5, the seasonal average. When you do that, now remember I said I'm going to list my answers for the seasonal proportion. I'll just make this point now. You are asked eventually, when you give your final answer, to make it correct to 1 decimal place. So don't round too early. So because it asks for 1 decimal place, if I go to 2 places away from the place that I have to round to, the accuracy in my final answer should be maintained. I don't need to list it to 9 decimal places. Usually rule of thumb, if it's 2 decimal places away from the number of decimal places you are asked to give your answer to, accuracy should still be maintained. You won't have rounding error involved. So the next entry is 32, and again I'm dividing that by 29.5. I'm going to do that for all the entries in the first column, and then I'm going to put in my values. So 1.085, 1.763, 0.441. Okay, now we're going to do the same for the other columns, right? And you can see now why I'm saying, whilst the maths is fairly straightforward, it is very time consuming. There's a lot of steps that you need to do, but the maths isn't difficult. But to avoid, like I said, working systematically avoids its errors. So now for my second cycle, which is 2006, I need to take my entries from 2006, but I have to divide it by the seasonal average for 2006. So you'll notice in every column, they should have the same denominator. So let's make sure that we're actually working this out correctly. So you'll notice each of these have the same denominator, as do those, similarly for those. So let me just set that up quickly. So we're dividing this one by 34.5. Next one is 39 divided by 34.5. Next entry is 58 divided by 34.5. And 17 divided by 34.5. Okay, so just filling in the answers here: 0.730, 1.111, 1.778, 0.381. We come over here: 0.696, 1.130, 1.681, and 0.493. So that's done. So we now need to, so this is working out our seasonal proportion. That's what these entries are all the way down. That's your seasonal proportion. And that is step 2. Step 3 is calculating our seasonal index. And so we're going to take all of our entries in the top row, 7.12, 0.730. So you take the seasonal proportion for each cycle. We have 3 cycles to consider. I divide it by 3, and I'm going to get, now the answer I get here, when I add these all up, I will get it to 3 decimal places, but I was in fact asked to give it to 1 decimal place, if you remember in the question. So I'm actually going to round to 1 decimal place. Now when you do that, in this case, you get 0.7. Let's do the next one: 1.085 plus 1.111 plus 1.130 divided by 3. And that gives you 1.1, making sure I go to 1 decimal place. 1.763 plus 1.778 plus 1.681 divided by 3. And that gives you 1.7. 0.441 plus 0.381 plus 0.493 divided by 3 gives you 0.4. Okay, so let's just put this up here. I'm going to put a reminder to you, like as I've mentioned already. Let's write it down though. Just a reminder to you. So to ensure accuracy, working should always be to 2 decimal places more. This is rule of thumb, more than the number of decimal places asked for in the question. And if you do that, like I said, you're not going to have a rounding error. When you are marked on your exam, it has to be 0.7. If you make a rounding error and it's 0.6 or it's 0.8, you don't get the mark. You've gone through all these calculations. You don't want to lose your mark on a technicality in the last step.